We are excited to welcome you all to this session with Full Frame Initiative. We are hosting today with the American Society of Adaptation Professionals. This workshop is an opportunity to explore the concept of well-being, or as you'll learn from Katja today, the needs and lived experiences that are essential for all of us to thrive. These elements intuitively make sense to us, and they're well documented in science as essential, but they're often overlooked in the name of efficiency. And we need reminders like this session today of how much of a difference these elements make when they're considered as fundamental design principles. Well-being is also a journey. It's a questioning. How are you in the space that you're in right now? What keeps you and your community healthy and whole? How are you, your partners, your friends, and colleagues doing? So we welcome the opportunity to learn from FFI today, to open ourselves up to these questions. We hope this feels like a welcome space for everyone to explore what this means to you and your life and your mission and your practice. Our agenda today will start with an introduction to well-being concepts led by Katja Fell-Smith. She's a well-being expert and founder of the Full Frame Initiative, and she and Matthew Ledger-Small have put this session today, and we're so grateful for their work. We'll begin with some learning. We'll have some time for conversation in small groups and exploration, and we'll have a reflection at the end. Again, if you're just joining, please feel free to share your name, your location, where you're calling in from today in the chat, and any questions or anything you're curious about. And then just to note that Matthew and Katja have agreed to share the slides that you'll be seeing today with all of you. So don't feel the need to take a ton of notes. We'll be able to share those with you afterwards. And with that, I will hand it over to Katja. Thank you so much.
Says am I muted? Unmuted now? I keep getting these compliments. Okay, thank you. You can hear me. We're off to a great start. Happy Friday, everybody. Thank you, Kristen. It is so great to be here. And thank you, Deborah and Maggie, for just being amazing collaborators in putting this together. You all are some thoughtful people and the kind of folks that we really love working with. And it's great to see some folks we've worked with, Rich Stoltz and John Shapiro, who is really key to this work that I'm going to share with you today, and other folks that we've gotten to know, and to just get to meet so many other folks, even if we don't get to talk directly. Really, I'll be in small groups with some of you. So I am Katja Fell-Smith. I'm the founder and CEO of the Full Frame Initiative. And my background is a eclectic mashup of science and deep community advocacy and community partnership work and public policy and movement building. So what I'm going to share with you today has kind of a spirit of that mashup in it, which we hope is useful because my sense is that all of those orientations and more are represented in this webinar. I also just want to recognize that these are really, really fraught times to be doing the work and in the communities that you all are in and care about, and that we're in and care about today. And so at this moment of real disconnect and dismantling, to just acknowledge that many of us are just holding a lot right now. And this webinar on well-being might not have felt quite as personal to some folks maybe 6 months ago, right? But that there is just a lot going on for folks. So if you are coming into this space and it is hard to think beyond yourself and your immediate family, welcome. If you are coming in thinking about well-being from a place of fear or concern and love for a community or communities that you are really worried about in this moment, welcome. If you are coming in with a policy and a systems lens, if you are coming in thinking of this as a moment of opportunity as well as crisis, welcome. You don't have to shift that lens, hopefully, in order for this to be a meaningful presentation. And so just be who you are and come in as you are. And I hope that you find something that you need and that is helpful for you and your work as we move forward. So without further ado, I am going to start sharing slides because that's what we do in webinars. We share our screens. All right. So I mentioned the Full Frame Initiative, and I just wanted to share a little bit about what we do, just to again, as just an orientation. We are, as it says on the slide, a national social change organization. We've been around for over 15 years, and we work with a really extraordinary and growing cohort of government leaders, community leaders, activists, agencies, researchers, artists, business people, who come together with us because they share a commitment to moving the US towards a country where everyone has a fair shot at well-being. And this is boundary spanning work. So it's everything from healthcare to social services to infrastructure work in cities to, I'm going to share a couple of examples of how this has been used in different contexts. And John Shapiro has been with us as a senior fellow for the last number of years, really bringing our work into the climate space. So much gratitude for him. And the work he's doing, and he will be a guide on the other side of this for everybody. So I want to start with somebody else's voice, because you're going to hear a lot from me, but we're going to hear from Patrick McNeil for a minute from Flint. I think we are.
Good afternoon, good morning, wherever the world finds you at today. Wellbeing changed the game for me because it gave me a way to share what was in my heart about the needs of our community. It was a vehicle that I could use to convey this idea that it was more than one issue that brought us to this place, and it will take more than one solution to bring about the significant change that we need. It allowed me to take a theory of change and bring the nuance of my community's lived experience and apply it in a way that was community centered and holistic enough to wrestle with what neighborhoods like mine have been dealing with, disinvested in for close to 50 years. It was a way that we could find hope and encouragement that could lead to the one thing that all communities like mine need, and that is trust. My name is Patrick McNeil. I hail from the north side of Flint, Michigan, and I am a well-being champion. Good afternoon, good morning.
Nope. Sorry, Patrick. Gotta get beyond you.
What?
There we go. Okay. Patrick, and I'm going to share a little bit about what is happening in North Flint in a minute. But Patrick is one of hundreds of examples of that cohort of really extraordinary leaders around the country that I mentioned before. And I think he speaks so passionately to what well-being as a game changer. And that's what I have come to believe over the last 15 years. So Kristen gave us a quick outline of where we're going. We just want to, for those of us who like to know what's on the journey, here we are. We are about to move into what do we mean by well-being and this idea of trade-offs and well-being assets and well-being stripping. At about 35 minutes into the webinar, we're going to do some small group work. Then I'm going to introduce one more, how we actually design for well-being, and design can be taken in lots of different ways. We're going to do some additional small group work, and then we'll have a little closing at the end. So this is the journey that we are going on together. Mouse seems not to be working. I came across this quote in this extraordinary Climigration Network publication, Lead with Listening. And it just, to me, it actually, this is so tied to why well-being matters and what I and my colleagues at the Full Frame Initiative mean by well-being. And so I wanted just to share this quote. The well-being framework I am going to share is a way of, I think, thinking and communicating about the really disparate impact of the climate emergency and also how we can adapt to it, including through migration, but not only through migration, but one that really honors history and addresses the harms that have been really exacerbated by policy and decisions that are made by people very different from the people most affected. And I hope that this gives language to things that are intuitive. So if there's part of the presentation where you feel like, well, that seems obvious, that's okay. Good. It's obvious. I invite you to hold that part that feels reaffirming, like, yep, this is good. Yep, I get it. And to be aware and open to if there are places that feel like friction or rub, and to allow yourself to be challenged and stretched by those. But because my sense is that just about everybody, if not everybody on this call, is already working in a way that is well-being oriented. And so if this language can help be more intentional and more explicit with outsiders and others that need to understand your work and who you are, that can be a really powerful way of using this well-being framework. So why well-being? So the way we understand well-being is it's the experience of being whole, collectively and individually. And it turns out we, as a species, have been hardwired for this experience by hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years of evolution. And we crave that experience because the various ingredients that make us feel whole are essential for us to have health and hope and to weather challenges, right? And so this drive for well-being isn't about well-being being the thing that happens after other things are okay. It is, I want everybody to think of this as the experience that we're seeking, and we know what it's like when we feel whole, and we know what it's like when we feel not just harried or unhappy or upset, but just fractured and not being able to be seen as full people. And so we invite you to think about this drive for well-being as this extraordinary resource at our collective disposal, that if we can sort of tack our sails to harness, we can do really extraordinary things. And that tacking our sails is really, really important because we all share this drive for well-being, but we live in a country that has, from its founding through the present, made sure that we don't all have a fair shot at that experience of being collectively whole, of being individually whole. And that is, and because of this connection between health, hope, and weathering challenges, FFI contends that inequitable access to well-being is a taproot of so many injustices like health disparities, wealth disparities, climate injustices, environmental injustices, social disparities. And so that is why we exist. That is why the Full Frame Initiative exists and why we work with so many partners. Let me go a little bit deeper into well-being. So this, I mentioned the being whole. This mouthful on this slide is the technical definition, which you can see why we often just start out with. It's the experience of being whole. But it's the set of needs and experiences universally required, meaning it's for all of us, in combination and balance to weather challenges and have health and hope. Within that circle are what these 5 needs and experiences are. At the end, we are going to share resources so you can learn a lot more about this, but very, very quickly, they're connectedness. That's relationships with people, but it also is relationships with nature and places and experiences. It also is a sense of belonging that can, yes, it can be based on identity or a shared place, but it also can be connectedness across time and belonging to things that are bigger than ourselves, which spirituality, awe, connection to land, like we saw in that earlier quote about home from the Climigration Network. Stability is about rhythms and patterns in our daily lives or in maybe weekly, but it's not about sort of big, huge rituals. This is about rhythms in time that allow us to feel rooted and confident that small things aren't going to set off really big cascades. And the idea of patterns is that space also matters. I call this like, can you find your bathroom in the middle of the night without having to turn on the light, right? Like we need to, and this sense of stability isn't that everything is exactly the same for long periods of time. It is what we need to not have to be hypervigilant all the time. If we don't have a sense of what we can count on and that small things aren't going to set off a big cascade, we have to only be we can't concentrate on longer horizons. Our safety can also lead to vigilance. Look, it's the absence of pain, shame, fear, or danger. But our understanding of safety is that it is not an objective phenomenon. It is our identities matter, our individual and collective experiences matter for who is safe, where, and under what circumstances. We need to feel that we matter, which is feeling significant, and that we can actually make a difference, that there's some correlation between our efforts and our outcomes, the sense of accomplishment. It's a sense of stretch, right? So it's about, if I take a risk, can something get better? Can something be different? Does it matter that I'm here, that we're here? And relevant resources are the things that we often think of as basic needs, although all of these others are basic needs too. But relevant resources are air, clean air and water, sleep, food, shelter, things like that. So we need these. So these are what we call the 5 domains of well-being. You will see around the edge of them, there's a circle that is sort of like a rubber band holding them all together. That's the combination and balance that holds them together and keeps them from being a sequence. We don't meet these one at a time. Just think about our own lives, right? Like we're just constantly sort of balancing among these things. And so that is the combination and balance piece of this. Before I talk about trade-offs though, I want to just talk quickly about this weathering challenges part. It's a part of the definition that it feels so relevant for this community that I'm getting to meet with today. Because weathering challenges, of course, is resilience in the sense of being able to bounce back to where we were before, but it is also, weathering challenges sometimes means adaptation. And so we think of like this, that access to well-being is the ability to do both of those things. But of course, because of the sense of mattering, our ability to weather challenges also has a lot to do with how much say we have in that and how much sense of agency we get to have in those weathering challenges. So what are trade-offs? And I know I'm giving you a lot of information sort of as a fire hose at the beginning. This is just to try it on and a taste. We're almost through this well-being part. Trade-offs are the immediate and long-term well-being costs of a decision or an inaction. So I don't get safer generally without having to maybe give up something else in another domain or something else. So that's just true for all of us. It's just about every decision, everything we do has a trade-off. That's not inherently a bad thing, but it's our weighing. Is this worth it to me? Is this worth it to us? It's not about motivation. I can be very motivated if I'm sleeping on the street to get housing, but if it means giving up all my connections, if it means giving up all my rhythms on the street that I have on the street, if it means giving up a lot of the trade-offs may be too big. So motivation and the sense of trade-offs being worth it are separate things. And trade-offs aren't always equitably distributed. So trade-offs are this underbelly that we often don't think about. We may look at, hey, is everybody going to benefit the same amount from this infrastructure project, from an adaptation project, et cetera? Is everybody going to benefit the same? It could be equitable benefits, except for when you net it against the trade-offs. The trade-offs often sit most greatly in communities that have consistently faced the greatest harm. And so part of understanding well-being is paying as much attention to trade-offs and what people feel that they are losing, as well as what is to be gained. And there's this idea in trade-offs of deal breakers. Deal breakers are those trade-offs that a person or a community is absolutely unwilling to make, and that they self-identify as leading to harm unless they are absolutely coerced or something else. So I might be willing to leave. I might be willing to relocate as long as my grandmother who I live with doesn't have to go into a nursing home. But if you are going to put my grandmother in a nursing home, I'm not leaving. I understand how unsafe it is. I understand all these other things. That's a deal breaker for me. And there's going to be a breakout looking specifically at deal breakers and trade-offs later on. So if this is intriguing to you, just know that there's going to be a chance to really explore this in greater detail. But it feels really, really relevant to be thinking about how we can have a sort of more scientific, rigorous framework that gives that validates what you all know, that we all know, that losses matter. And losses aren't just financial assets, that loss of history, loss of place, loss of lots of other things matters deeply. And so this idea of well-being and how we use well-being and understanding what's happening for us, what's happening for others, can be a powerful tool. Here's one example, really quick. ICAP was the intensive co-assessment planning process. It was a multi-agency partnership in Massachusetts that we did to demonstrate how paying attention to deal breakers and not forcing people to make trade-offs that they say are untenable for them could help people in need of housing get and retain housing quicker. And these were all folks dealing with domestic or sexual violence. You may say, what does this have to do with what we're here to talk about? Well, it's one example of how this has been used in a public setting. But the other thing is to just remember that this is about folks facing deal breakers where they're in systems that usually only emphasize safety, that usually only want them or only focus on one thing. And what happens when as a system we say, we want to understand what the safety will cost you. And we want to work around that so we don't make the problem even worse. And these are also folks that have had to often leave under tremendous duress. So there may be some parallels there, at least at an individual level. But climate, specifically. So we contend at FFI that dollars, dollars are important. They're how we value things. And this slide is a little bit funky given everything that's going on in the national world. Dollars matter, but they really are how we value things. And as people deep down, well-being is what we value, right? It is what we crave, and dollars help us get there, and dollars are full of meanings, etc. And just as Kristen said at the beginning, our contention, and this is work that John Shapiro has really been leading in, is that we need tools for climate adaptation, climate migration that actually center well-being. So we can all know how important well-being is, but if we don't have tools and ways of operationalizing it and using it, it's going to continue to be the soft, fuzzy stuff on the outside. So what can we do about that? Well, I'm going to give you two more things to think about, and then your brains may be full, but I'll do a really quick recap. At a community level, this need for well-being, this drive for well-being that we all have, shows up as well-being assets. There are places and spaces that people are just get created, that are safe places of belonging and safety, etc. And within every community, there are well-being assets that people don't put a sign out that says well-being asset here, right? And often you need to you have to be there to know about them. And there's a particularly important kind of well-being asset called well-being reservoirs. And these are the shock absorbers that at a community level give greater access to well-being. They're low or no barrier to entry, whether it might be a community garden, it might be a park, it might be a library. Not every library, not every park, not every community garden, but they're places of mixing. And we know, and people have a sense of identity, but meet other people and begin to and form bonds that they wouldn't form otherwise. That could be light bonds, but these are incredible. It turns out these well-being reservoirs are incredibly important in times of economic, social, or climate or other major shocks in a community. And understanding what they are and the role that they fill in communities can be really important. Place helps people meet their need for well-being. And yet, those places and spaces, because we don't know how to name them, generally speaking, because we don't talk about them, label them, value them. We value them in our own community. We may value them in communities that we work with, but they aren't inherently valued in tools and in policy decisions, etc., as much as sort of dollars are often. These, what happens is a phenomenon we call well-being stripping. Those well-being assets, those well-being reservoirs are really at risk for being destroyed or undervalued or just unseen. And sometimes we don't have a choice. So there's flooding, there's other forces that we can't stop in the moment. But that well-being stripping is part of what lives with people when their community has been deeply affected by outside forces that we don't have control over. I am not monitoring chat, but before I go further, because I know we are running through a lot of content in a short period of time, Maggie, are there any questions in the chat that I need to attend to, that I should attend to before I move on?
I haven't seen any yet.
Okay. Feel free to put them in chat, and let's Maggie will interrupt me if there are questions in chat. So Patrick, who spoke to us at the beginning, North Flint is a community that is sick and tired of only being known for the lead in their water and for the bad things that happen, many of which they have sort of pointed in this visual as being in the soil. But this is a graphic illustrator came to our last community meeting with the residents of North Flint, where they are creating strategies for addressing environmental injustices, community violence, other challenges that build on the assets in that community that are the places and spaces and ways that people are already meeting their needs for well-being. And this is an example of all the different ways that they plan to and are already using this well-being framework to come together to make positive changes in their community. And I think that this is really powerful because I shared with you an example a minute ago that is about policymakers and state governments making decisions and allocating resources differently. But this is exactly the same framework that is being used by residents in a community that has not been well served by government in the past, and they are using it to push back and to advocate. Another example of this, of how this well-being framework is being used is this is a trade-off analysis tool. Another thing that we will give you a link to at the end. This is a way of gathering information from different constituencies about how a given policy or program or initiative will differentially impact people's access to well-being. And this is it can be customized and other things, but fundamentally what we find is that we tend to get excited for other people when about what is going to get better, as I said, what's going to increase a lot. But there's so much power in understanding what people understand as helping them be connected, helping them be safe. So a very simple example from a partnership is parents who lived on the street that really, really needed to be repaved. It was like, the kind of thing that could break your axle, give you the potholes that will give you, that will take out a tire. And yet when the city aimed to repave it, they were incredibly upset because the only thing that made people drive slowly on that street and not race down it was the fact that the street needed to be repaved. So that repaving that we would think, who could be against that? Who could be, right, it's not that they would say that that was a well-being reservoir, but that actually those potholes in some way were a well-being asset to that community. The answer is not to not pave the street. The answer is to partner with the community around, well, what are the other traffic calming things we can put in place so you don't lose your tires and your kids are safe? But if we don't understand actually how things are being used and we assume that our perspective about what progress looks like for other people, often out of the goodness of our hearts, and this can be true in families too, by the way, this isn't just across lines of difference. This can be true with our partners, this can be true with our kids, this tool and adaptations of this tool help us gather that information and help people feel seen and heard and help us not inadvertently engage in well-being stripping. We have taken this tool and in partnership with the Census Bureau a number of years ago, created a technology platform and built it out, this concept of how do you identify how trade-offs are going to be distributed in a community, created something. It was another government project, so it needed another acronym, which the acronym for this is WIAT, the Wellbeing Insights, Assets, and Trade-offs tool. And this is a tool for gathering prospectively how a given project, a built environment project, which could include an adaptation project, actually will distribute its well-being benefits and its well-being trade-offs in community so that you could adjust that plan ahead of time rather than waiting till afterward to say, oops, and then we're going to try and fix it. It's not a press the button tool. It requires community partnership and engagement, but it's been used in several communities. On the right are quotes from a partnership in Kingston, New York, where they used WIAT as they were planning for addressing brownfields in their community. And we've also worked with the city of Cleveland on a connector project to the Lake Erie waterfront. And they have found that starting with well-being in that planning effort has had these ripple effects. And they're now bringing this well-being into multiple projects and departments. And there's broader adoption of different parts of the approach, like partnering with community differently. And they're even seeing increased levels of civic participation and some healing of past distrust and harms. So between WIAT and ICAP and North Flint, and there are many, many other projects, and there's going to be a breakout group on systems if you want to talk more about like systems applications of this. But But I'm sharing these examples with you only because I want us to all really, if nothing else, believe and know and hold tight. It is possible to change policy and to have policy that is rooted around well-being and a fair shot at well-being. We are now going to do our first breakout groups. So we invite you just to take a couple of minutes, maybe 3 minutes, 3 or 4 minutes, just to reflect. I've given you a lot of content. I gave you a definition of well-being that include these 5 domains, this concept of trade-offs and deal breakers, this idea that at the community level, there are well-being assets that aren't just individual assets, they are held by the community and even well-being reservoirs. And finally, this idea that, if we don't pay enough attention to well-being, we can inadvertently strip well-being, not just wealth, from communities. And certainly the climate emergency does that too. So with all of that, just what's come up for you in the last 30 minutes? Is there something that's sticking with you that feels exciting? Is there something you're curious about? Is there something like, this sounds a little weird to me? I'm not so sure about that. And just be aware of the lens you're focusing on. And thinking about, does this feel like it's unlocking something? It can unlock something and reinforce something, but also challenge in another way. We invite you to just take 3 minutes to jot that down, and I'm going to be quiet for 3 minutes. And then we're going to break into small groups to just share with each other a little bit about what's coming up. Not in a sort of very formal way, but in a like, hey, here's what I'm thinking and hearing. So Maggie is going to randomly send us to different corners of the interwebs in small groups just to share some reflections with each other. This is not a mandatory everybody has to share, but it also is a chance to just try it on with other people and see where the energy is. But I know in my group, we had some really juicy, interesting things that came up. So what we'd like to do is once more, a little bit more silence. Just let's take 2 minutes for folks to put in chat something that you are sitting with, either as something that you shared with the group or something that you heard that's really like, wow, that's interesting and you're chewing on. So thank you. Keep going. What I'm loving about these chats is I think they illuminate all the those different lenses that people can bring to this, and so many different things that can sort of stick with people. And I'm glad that people are finding it meaningful in ways that are like speak to where you all are now. And I wish we could just have a conversation about the rest of this. But it's a Friday afternoon, so we need to give you more slides. So just a little bit more. I know that one of the things that came up in the group that I was in, there was a piece of it that was about systems. There was some stuff about trade-offs. There was some stuff about sort of culture and storytelling. So I'm really excited that we are mere minutes away from getting back into groups that are going to be groups where you can pick. Like, remember, choose your own adventure. Am I dating myself? You can choose your own adventure for the next topic group that we are going to explore. So without further ado, so this last piece of content that I am going to share is about the planet. And actually somebody in our group said it so perfectly that people are not the center of the universe, let alone the Earth, let alone the universe, right? But that we could all disappear and the Earth would move on. And I think Leah, who shared that E.O. Wilson's observation that if all the insects go, everything else stops, right? And so recognizing that the framework I just shared with you, I shared through a people-centric lens. FFI has actually been doing work to push beyond that and to understand how that framework is very relevant, and it is relevant and useful well beyond humans. And what I want to share with you now are some design principles that have emerged really over the last almost 20 years for what are the considerations if we actually want to design with well-being at the center of our work. There are 6 principles. The well-being of Earth and its inhabitants, we need to start with what matters and not assume that we're going to get to what matters if we don't put that at the very beginning. So often we design for one part of well-being, safety, or economic development, or something else, with the expectation that that's going to somehow get to well-being at the end. And I'm not talking about just we here, but the royal we. Starting with well-being is actually saying, like, what would happen if we made our decisions with this idea of combination and balance, and what the needs and experiences of people on the earth are, etc. And we paid attention to a fair shot at well-being, which is actually what's an equitable distribution of access to well-being. So how do some people or species or places not get dinged the most? Lots of resources we will share with you about these principles that I'm going to go through pretty quickly. The second principle is that we need to co-create. And we need to design and implement for not only communities, but we need to design and implement with nature, with community, with place, with history, not on behalf of it or against it. And this is really where power comes in a lot into the work. Really thinking about how in our processes of putting well-being at the center, are we not making decisions about what that well-being should look like for and with people, and what trade-offs are worth it and what aren't. The third principle is we need to heal and regenerate. And I think this is probably obvious to everybody on the call, but I think we all are so aware of how many decisions are made as if there isn't history, as if whoever the agency going in or whatever is the first to go in, and whether that is to try to partner with community or to build something or to take something down or to have a conversation. And there are so many harms that are held in collective consciousness and people's bodies in the earth. And that process of how we do the work of starting with well-being is actually really core to healing and regenerating. And we have seen in communities that folks will say that actually just the starting with well-being made them feel seen as whole, not simply as problems that the city was trying to be nice about dealing with, or just taxpayers, or just something else, but actually as whole people and whole communities who matter. And the reality is that people, when we feel that we are seen as whole, we don't need to get everything we want, because we feel often respected in what we want. So this isn't about how does everybody get everything they want. The fourth is that we need to foster webs of connectedness and connection capital. Yes, among us, as all the different ways we think about social capital among people, but of course, there's the science is exploding about how literally there is this other kind of, there's social capital among trees and of course mycelium networks, and but also that we need interspecies connectedness as well. That we need to span boundaries, and this can be boundaries of field, it can be boundaries of sector, it can be boundaries of place, it can be boundaries of class and other social divides. But of course, it is also recognizing that you don't get diversity if there's not some spanning of boundaries and the holding of a whole that is greater. So we can't plan for each constituent part without understanding the impact of the well-being on others. And the final principle is we need to build on assets and innovations. And what is an asset in a moment may not have looked like an asset before. Think about that street with the potholes. That's an asset now that wasn't necessarily, it wouldn't be an asset if there weren't kids, but it is adaptive there. But also just the evolution is that things are changing. And we need to continually build on the innovation that comes out of things. Then so much of policy is about what is the right practice, as if that one practice, once we get it in place, or that one policy is going to hold forever. So these are 6 principles that I just went through really fast. In designing this, we thought, well, maybe we should just go deeper on one, with the assumption that folks are doing lots of stuff in lots of these principles, but the one that is often most sort of foreign to folks actually is the idea of starting with well-being. And so we're about to go into groups, and I will tell you a little bit more about what's happening in these groups. Starting with well-being does not mean ensuring that everybody has everything that they need in all of those domains all the time. It means starting with awareness that decisions that people and all other species on the planet often make are actually about preserving what belonging we have, what safety we have, what sense of mattering and purpose we have, et cetera. And access to resources, which can show up as culture. It can show up as lots of different things. Culture came up in my small group, and to be listening in ways that, as I said before, are paying as much attention to what communities and what we as individuals are seeking to gain, paying as much attention to what we are fearful of losing, and helping to think about whether that needs to be honored, because the loss is going to happen no matter what, whether we want it to or not. Are there ways of honoring that, or are there ways of carrying some of those assets forward in different ways, shape, or form? So to explore this principle one, we are going to have 5 groups, and you're going to get to pick. Group 1 is going to be held lightly by my colleague Matthew Leger-Small from Full Frame Initiative, and is going to explore how might starting with well-being help us hold the well-being of communities facing relocation, but also the well-being of receiving communities. How do we honor relationships with land, place in history, and more, as well as the well-being of partners and supporters. Like all of those different, like who are those constituencies we're always thinking of, and what are all those different needs? So that's group 1. Group 2 is trade-offs. So where are trade-offs already being recognized and considered in general, in your work, in your life, et cetera? And how does the concept of deal breakers maybe help us in this work? And how does trade-offs help us understand resistance differently? And my colleague Madge Haynes will be holding that space if you want to opt into that. Systems and history, my colleague Lotus Yu will be holding space for this. How can starting with well-being, this is not a clinical framework, right? This is something that has structural implications, cultural implications. How does starting with well-being help us understand and make the case for policy, mental models, structural forces need to change, how they're shaping access in the past and present? This says group 3 at the top, but that's a lie. It's actually group 4. That is storytelling. Sorry. And Kristen, you are leading that, correct? You're holding that space. So Kristen's going to hold this space to explore how, if we started with well-being, how might we tell the story of place and change in ways that might resonate with people whom we have trouble reaching now? And group 5 is wild card. If none of these interests you, or you can't decide, or you have a burning question that you just can't get beyond in order to pick a group, you're stuck with me, and I am the wild card. Well, thank you guys for trying it on. And we are just going to do a quick kind of whip around with the folks that were holding space in each group, sharing a thought or two from each one, not as the entirety of your conversations by any means. And you are going to be hearing momentarily about what you can do with all that energy that you are carrying with you now. So hang on, but we're going to do a quick report out. So let's just go in order. Group 1, constituencies. Matthew.
I heard a lot of hunger in the room to know more about how well-being can serve as a bridge across difference, and promoting a sense of common cause among different sections of a community, and promoting understanding without enforcing any sort of erasure of history and identity, and preserving what makes us different, right? So really, in a nutshell, I think that's like one of the many themes that came up.
Very cool. Very cool. Group 2.
Group 2, a lot of really
Trade-offs.
great nuggets in our conversation. I will share one example that the language of trade-offs was helpful. Folks found that helpful, that what used to be starting with the question, under what circumstances would you want to move, can now be, what would be the trade-offs of staying? What would be the trade-offs of leaving? And acknowledging in that regard that there is a difficult choice and that there is some loss either way. And then the deal breaker language was really something that was helpful as well. And then I added on the mitigating factors in terms of helping with managing trade-offs and helping people address that in terms of adaptation and all the other things that go with that. So that was another tip that would help folks have that conversation differently. So Wish we had 2 hours. That's all.
Group 3.
I think that's us.
Very
We talked
original.
about systems and history. Our conversation ranging from staff well-being and the structures that supports and don't support staff well-being to the trauma that communities have experienced and how that shows up and decisions being forced in crisis. And we really wrestled with the fact that many communities are already shouting about what's important to them and what matters to them, and the people holding the power in decision-making positions are not listening because it's better for their well-being to not. And how do we shift that power and so that community well-being can be prioritized?
A nice small conversation, man. Nice topic you can solve on a Friday afternoon. But in all seriousness, like, yeah, that's a big part of the it. Storytelling. Tell us a story.
I always think about the voices that we raise, and I ask my constituency to help me understand and to think about how the voices of the voiceless, those things in those places and those entities that don't have a human voice or Facebook or all of the tools that we have, can talk to us, and how do they tell their stories. And we heard some very wonderful examples and ways to bring those voices and those perspectives and that care and caring and thoughtfulness over a span of time that may be different from our urgency, ways that we can bring those voices to fore and have them translated, understood, ingested, so that our work is more representative of Earth than of humans alone.
Thank you. And I think the report outs could be longer and stay in conversation with each other. We are, as advertised, we are going to share these slides with you, which will mean that you will have access to these links because you will have something to actually click on very soon. And we, FFI is actually in the process of winding down as an organization and transitioning our mission to a extraordinary national network of folks, including John Shapiro, who will be a contact and resource for this work moving on. But that also means we are uploading tons more resources to our website. So you will find that there. Deborah gets the last word. Before I stop, I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody for, in the midst of everything, carving out time for this and to be together, which I think community is a really just so important now. So thank you, everybody, for your interest and for engaging so deeply in this content. Deborah.
Being whole is not selfish work at all. Being whole, being well, being healthy makes you the thing that people want to be, the thing that people want to emulate, the thing that gets other folks through the day. I encourage you to be whole for each other and to think about the way your voices can transform all of the things you care about most. And so do it in the sense of community, work in the, work for not only yourself and your community, but what you believe that those places and those people can be. We're only a small dot in the quantum nature of the universe. And so we don't have a lot of time to do it. So just do it, you know? I think about, I'm remodeling my house now. And as they tore out walls and got to the heart of the house, I saw the care and the attention that was put into a house that was built 85 years ago. There's no sheetrock in it. It's layers upon layers of things that made the house strong. When the tree fell on it during Katrina, it made the house resist. It made a home for several families. And it's an intention of people who built the house who probably couldn't live in this neighborhood 86 years ago. The folks who took care and knew that at some point, maybe their daughter or their granddaughter or their grandson or descendant would be able to enjoy the space. So I urge you to be healthy and whole, or those who come after you, who need you to create that so that they can enjoy the space. Be healthy, be well, and lean on each other. Thank you. Thank you, Caitlin.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
I love having Deborah close out. Thank you so much. Just so all of you know, I think we're also going to be holding some space to think about how to continue some of the conversations that we had today. There were so many amazing topics that were raised. And so don't feel like this is the end. It feels quite abrupt. We're going to be thinking about how to bring these topics back to you in different ways. Huge gratitude to Katja and Matthew and Madge and Lotus, to Maggie for making everything work seamlessly, to all of you for digging in so deeply, to the American Society of Adaptation Professionals for co-hosting with us, to my mom. No. I hope you all have a wonderful Friday and a restful weekend. And we will see you all soon.